Hello, I'm Bob Harris. Welcome to Durman's educational video series. Today we are going to be demonstrating Perdure SLE self-leveling epoxy flooring system. In this case we're going over a hardy backer board, but also this would apply if we were going over a wood substrate. So what we're going to be demonstrating is starting with the E02 epoxy, and we're going to start by treating the seams of the plywood, or in this case the hardy backer board. We're going to roll roughly 1 foot to 14 inches of epoxy over the seams, and we're going to embed this fiberglass mesh into the epoxy. Once we've embedded the epoxy, then we'll coat the entire surface, regardless if it's a wood substrate or here a hardy backer board. If you're using the fast cure version of this product, you're going to wait about 3 to 4 hours and move on to the next step, which is putting down the Perdure FE80. The FE stands for flexible epoxy, and what you'll do is you'll put this product down over the previously primed surface with the E02, and once you've coated the entire surface with that, you're going to broadcast dried sand to refusal, which we'll demonstrate in the video. Now that product is going to take approximately 18 hours to dry, depending on the conditions, of course, and once it's dry, you'll come in and you'll scrape the sand, vacuum the sand up so you don't have any residual sand. From there, you're ready to move on to the next step, which is going over the top of that with the Perdure E10, which is an epoxy, and you have an additive that goes into this, which is the SLA, which stands for self-leveling additive. So the whole goal here is we're trying to create a film build for durability, whether it's going over wood or hardy backer board or even concrete as well. So you want to create that film build, which is why you're using the SLA. As part of the system also, you can use the epoxy color pack in this product, in the E10. It's the ECP, and if you look on the back of the Durman brochure here, all of the colors are listed. Now, once you've completed this part, the final application that you'll apply is the Perdure P72, which is your polyaspartic top coat, and that's going to provide excellent abrasion resistance. You're going to have a beautiful, long-lasting floor. Let's demonstrate how it's done. Douglas and I are getting ready to mix our E02 prime coat. Couple important considerations. You want to mix for a solid 3 minutes. Also, I've heard horror stories in the industry where people, when they're mixing, they're not careful and they get it on the side of the bucket, and that material never gets mixed, and that's the first thing to dump onto a floor. So you want to make sure you don't dump any on the side of the bucket. You have to have cohesively mixed both A and B. This is a 2-to-1 system. We'll go ahead and start. So Douglas is going to go ahead and start with the A. He's going to dump all of the A into that, and he has not got any on the side of the bucket, which is really, really good. You know, we've had a couple people complain about pot life, and there's a lot of variables or considerations to take into account with regard to the pot life. When you're mixing a big volume of material like this, this kit right here, it generates a lot of heat, okay? So you have to get it down on the floor quickly and disperse that material, or if you're learning, perhaps mix half batches. Also, the ambient temperature, like right here at the time we're producing this video, it's very hot in the warehouse, and the humidity also factors into the pot life of your epoxy. So it really varies. You can't set a stopwatch and say it's going to be 20 minutes or 15 minutes because there's so many variables. All right, Douglas and I are getting ready to apply our prime coat of the E02. It's always a good idea anytime you're using a new roller, still try to de-lint it. So instantly I see a lot of the unwanted lint come off of the roller that would otherwise end up on your floor. So always get in a routine of de-linting your roller like you see here. This material has been mixed for 3 minutes. Just from doing a lot of epoxies, I'm really nervous because I know that having it sit in a mass volume like this, it's going to start generating heat. But for the purpose of this video, a couple of important factors. So this manufacturer here, right on the side here, it says 5 to 7 mils. And so this product is supposed to go down at 5 to 7 mils, which is roughly 1/16 of an inch. That also equates to roughly 200 square feet if you're rolling it out. So you need to adhere to that recommendation at about 200 square feet. So we're going to go ahead and start with the seams here. Okay. A little bit here for them. All right, let's see where that gets them. Now you'll notice Douglas is in spiked shoes. So when you're doing this, you definitely want to be in spiked shoes to be able to go ahead and roll this down. First thing we're going to do though, let's get this all put down at the proper thickness. We'll back roll it, and then what we're going to do is embed the mesh, okay? So normally I'm walking out on a job like this. It's kind of hard. I'm going to hand the squeegee over to Douglas and let him move that around. I'll follow behind him with a back roll. And then once we've coated the entire board, basically what we'll do is then we'll come back and embed the mesh. Give them a little more material there. As I said, it's hard to work in a confined area. Normally he's walking long passes with the notch squeegee. The whole reason for doing the mesh that you see here is to help with the deflection. So when we move on to our next system, we're getting a thicker film build, and basically this is going to help that the crack from transferring into our final coating. So you just want to make sure it's embedded down, covering the seams. So usually it's about 6 inches in width, 3 inches on either side, and just make sure that's embedded nice and flat. And with the fast cure version of this E02, basically 3 to 4 hours later in the conditions like this, we're ready to move on to our next step. We're getting ready to install our Perdure FE80. Let's recap what we've done up until this point in preparation for the application of the FE80. So this was intended to go over, in this case, hardy backer board or cement board, or it could be the wood is what we demonstrated. So what we applied yesterday is the E02, and we went ahead and we used a fiberglass mesh over all of the seams, and we put the E02 down at approximately 5 mils thick and used the notch squeegee, and then we back rolled that. We have a nice seamless transition. This is laid down flat, everything is cured out. Approximately 14 hours has transpired. Now it's time to move on to the next step for the preparation of this application. It is a good idea after the material is cured the next day, like where we're at right now, is to go ahead and sand the substrate. Generally, what most people will do is they'll use a side-by-side or a swing buffing machine like you see here. with a 120 grit sanding screen. And I'm not sure if the camera can see it, but if you look here, we've sanded purposely these two panels here, and we've not sanded the other side. And you can see it kind of hazes over, it almost clouds it, and there's like little pinholes, which is common for coatings. So we want to break that surface tension, create a slight profile, and then once we've sanded it, we're going to solvent wipe it with acetone. It has to be very clean before moving on to the next step. So that's where we're at. We've sanded this side. We're going to go ahead and continue to sand the rest of this, and then we'll talk about the installation of the FE80. We're getting ready to mix and ultimately install our FE80, which is our flexible epoxy. To recap where we're at right now, we sanded this with a 120 screen and solvent wiped it with acetone. It's now clean and dry, so we're getting ready to mix. You can see it's both A and B. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. It is important on part A to always pre-mix before you mix the two components together. Go ahead and give a nice thorough mixing of the part A, which is white in appearance. That's just part of the system. Keep in mind, this is a multiple application complete system, so the fact that it's white doesn't matter because we still have 1 or 2 applications to go over the top of that. So we're going to go ahead and start mixing. And the purpose of this product, if you remember on the E02, we put that down at approximately 5 mils thick. Now this product is going to be more of a film build. It's going to be up to 15 to 20 mils thick. And the logic is on our seams where we've used the mesh, if there's any deflection that's occurring in the wood subbase, or in this case the cement board, the deflection stays underneath this and it doesn't reflect or telegraph through into the final system. So this is an important key component to preventing cracking, translating into the finished surface. So Douglas and I are going to go ahead and mix. He's going to go ahead and start with the part A, which has already been pre-mixed for 3 minutes. And then we'll go ahead and mix this product for 3 minutes, and we'll show you how to install the FE80. All right, we've mixed our FE80, which is our flexible epoxy. We're getting ready to install it. A couple observations. You'll notice Douglas has some spiked shoes. A lot of times what installers will do is they'll take a brand new pair of spiked shoes, which are sharp to the point, and they'll take an angle grinder and just kind of flatten the bottoms. You'll notice that we're puncturing through this material. There's a lot of humidity and it's only about 13 or 14 hours old. And so for that reason, we're kind of puncturing through. So it's not a bad idea to go ahead and flatten those off. Another observation, we talked about it on the opening. This product's going to go down at 15 to 20 mils thick, and that's the notch squeegee that Douglas has in his hands ready to go. So that's important to put it down at the specified thickness. A couple of other observations before we get busy. You'll notice that we have weather stripping, which is adhesive tape that's creating a little lip. Now, why would you use that? Keep in mind, the whole purpose of this product is to minimize deflection, so we're building it up thicker. So if you're in a large industrial application, for example, where you couldn't pour the whole pour monolithically and you had to create a bulkhead, this would be a great scenario. One other scenario would be oftentimes when they have drywall at the edge of a slab, the drywall is suspended in the air up, maybe 3/4 of an inch, and the material continues to flow off of the edge. So you could use this as the transition underneath the drywall to stop the material from continuing to flow. And another example is, oftentimes applicators want to produce samples in off days. Perhaps it's a rainy day and they have some shop time. You can just use the weather stripping to create your own little samples for display purposes or to present to your architect or your customer. So we've mixed this for 3 minutes. and I'm just going to dump a ribbon here. Now, one thing I'm just always cautious. I'm just always reluctant to walk right out on a prepared floor. You know, I've got dust on my shoes, so in a real world setting, I would never just step onto the surface, because now I've potentially contaminated the surface, creating a potential bond breaker. So I would always have slip-on booties, or I would be in the spiked shoes like Douglas is. So I'm just going to kind of off to the side here, let him move the material around with the notch squeegee. Keep in mind, on this product, it only requires notch squeegeeing, so you don't have to come in necessarily in back roll. And we want that material to level out for, you know, roughly 2 to 3 minutes from the time that he's notch squeegee, like you see right there. It's just self-leveling. And then an important application after it's leveled out for 2 to 3 minutes is we broadcast sand to refusal. The sand needs to be dried sand. You can't use any sand that has moisture in it. So it needs to be dried sand. All right, Douglas has notched squeegeed down our FE80. You can see we've got excellent coverage. The only thing we're doing here is we're demonstrating, and I'm going to hand this over to Douglas to let him finish off. Sometimes if you're getting what we would call excessive outgassing bubbles for whatever reason, you can just do a quick light back roll, and we're using a looped roller here. So we're not using, you know, a roller that's going to put lint in there. We're just using a loop roller. You can also use a spiked roller only if you're getting the outgassing bubbles, and that's kind of a judgment call when you're actually putting the material down. If you don't have to roll, don't roll. It's not necessary. It's only in the event, like we talked about here, we punctured through the E02 just simply because of the timing. It's still curing, and in this case, we're just demonstrating using the looped roller. So once we've done that, we'll let that level out for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and broadcast our dried sand to refusal. Now, at this point, this is where I see some applicators kind of make a mistake by, when we come back the next day, we look, if you see dull over the surface, but then you see wet, shiny spots, what that means is those wet, shiny spots, they haven't broadcast enough sand to refusal. So when I say to refusal, I mean to refusal. You want to see no wet spots. If you see those wet spots, keep throwing more sand onto it until it dries uniformly. Now you can see right here, I'm speeding up too fast where we got a little bubbling. I'm going to just wait, and I'm going to let those bubbles kind of to level out and pop, and then I'll go ahead and broadcast. But this is what you're looking for, is uniform. I don't want to throw a big mound, okay? So you want to evenly distribute the sand, as you see here. Okay, we talked about broadcasting the dry sand to refusal, and you've got to resist the temptation to think that you've actually put enough. I talked about the smooth or the shiny spots. This is a good example. So Douglas and I went around the entire panel, and we threw on the sand, which we thought was an appropriate amount. But again, the fact that you're putting this material down at 20 mil thick, that sand will settle down. And so you don't want to come back the next day and see these shiny spots because you don't have enough sand. You can see here where it has a whitish appearance, or out here where it's much lighter. You need to keep putting sand so it looks consistently like a solid uniform layer of sand. Around the edge, believe it or not, we did put sand there, but the sand is self-leveled down. So make sure that when you're done broadcasting your sand, you've got a uniform appearance of sand across the whole panel. All right.